This is so weird to be back like this.
It really is. I know all of us much prefer face to face, but this.
Can I hear? Hold on one second. I can't hear.
Councilmember Mendoza, can you hear now? Okay. Well, at this time, I want to welcome everyone to the January 11th City Council successor meeting. We are at this time going to be interviewing applicants for the Planning Commission. It does looks like that we have a quorum. So if I could ask Margaret for a roll call, and if we could all have patience, and this is for the community as well. None of us anticipated coming back to Zoom so quickly, but in an abundance of caution because of the Omicron variant of COVID-19, we're doing this just to take extra safety precautions for everyone. So at this time, Margaret, if I could get a roll call.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Here.
Councilmember Meyer?
Here.
Councilmember Rary?
Here.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Here.
Mayor Bryant?
Here. We do have a quorum. All are in attendance, and so at this time we will open public comments, and I'll turn it to you, Margaret.
Immediately following the public comment portion of the agenda, the Zoom link will no longer be active to the general public, and interviews will only be streamed on the city's meeting streaming software located on the council agenda webpage. At this time, the public is permitted to address the City Council on items that are on the special meeting agenda. I received one written public comment from Marisol Valles expressing support for Anita Roberts as a Planning Commission member. And let me just share my screen. Oops. Sorry. Working on hitting the correct buttons here. Sorry. If you wish to speak under public comment, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature. I'll call upon your name if provided and unmute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. While we encourage your comments, state law prevents the City Council from discussing items that are not on their meeting agenda, and if appropriate, staff will follow up on them. I do have 3 hands raised. I'll start with Rod, followed by Danny Dorman. Rod, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to say something about Anita Roberts, who has been exemplary on the Planning Commission. She asks all the questions that I think I would ask if I was up there. Her voting record is excellent as far as I'm concerned. She really takes her job seriously in terms of making sure that every project that comes in is as compliant as possible. Unfortunately, she gets outvoted sometimes, but we like to see her up there. We'd like to see her stay up there, and we hope to get her some help tonight in taking into account more what the citizens of Brentwood want rather than what the developers in Brentwood want. We believe that Anita acts as a concerned citizen. She's there, as are all commissioners, as a basically volunteer. The pay isn't much, and it's a huge time commitment. But she does what I like to think any one of us that had the time would do. She looks at projects from the standpoint of how's it going to affect the community, how's it going to affect the neighbors. she's just amazing, and I love the questions that she asks, because a lot of times they're a little bit different from what you usually see, and usually they're very on point. I also would like to say that Clayton Peddy, I don't know the man personally, but I've heard a lot of great things about him. He seems to have the right idea about which direction Brentwood should go, and especially in this time when we're under extreme pressure from the state, we don't need to be messing around with adding houses to projects that are not in the zoning. We don't need to be making those kinds of concessions. I'm totally pro-business, but I'm not pro-developer, and I don't see any reason that we need to be padding developer profits. Finally, about Dirk Zeigler, Mr. Zeigler's been on the Planning Commission for a long time. I have met him. He's a fine person, but I just think he has the wrong idea about what Brentwood needs. As an example, I'll remind you of his vote on Goodwill, where he voted with a unanimous Planning Commission decision to deny the Goodwill application, and yet at the second reading he changed his vote to vote yes, and I think that was where his true heart was, and that was the wrong thing to do. Again, I don't want to disparage Mr. Zeigler anyway. I believe that what he does, he believes in his heart, is the right thing for Brentwood, but it is not. And I feel like he's had his turn. But right now, especially when we are under attack from the state, I think it's very imperative for us to have the right people on the Planning Commission who will protect our general plan and make sure that everybody at least follows the rules, and that we don't do any upzoning or rezoning at this point in time, and until such a time as maybe we can get SB 9 overturned by a voter initiative. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Danny Dorman, and I'd like to apologize. I set my timer, it's apparently set for 3 hours instead of 3 minutes for public comment. So if you could just be mindful when it gets to 2:57 to speak. The next speaker is Danny Dorman. Go ahead, Mr. Dorman.
Thank you very much. I will be short. I agree with everything that the previous caller had said. Full support of Anita, and her record, as was said, and I'm sure will be said later, speaks for itself. I do think we need some new blood. I also think that and I forgot the gentleman's name, but he's the one who's also running. His record pretty much speaks for itself as well. And we need to reaffirm and have people on this very important yet underpaid group to look out in the best interest of Brentwood. I think everyone so far thinks they have done the best thing for Brentwood. That doesn't necessarily mean that they have done the right thing for Brentwood. So should be easy decisions for you guys, and I wish everyone the best of luck in this tough decision. Thank you.
Hi, Margaret. I think it's my turn. This is Cynthiana Todor. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I would like to start by thanking Mr. Zeigler for his service and dedicating a lot of time and effort serving on the Planning Commission. However, I do think times have changed, and his vision is not fit for what the general plan stipulates going forward for Brentwood getting to full build out. So I would like to again thank him for his service. And the reason I'm not really supporting his candidacy tonight is because as of late, he had a lot of conflict of interest that was apparent, and actually he recused himself for several votes on several projects just because he had a vested interest due to his business. And so full participation and involvement of planning commissioners, it's really needed, as the previous speakers mentioned, at this crucial time in Brentwood's development. Secondly, I would like to express my support for, first, Anita Roberts. She did an amazing job representing Brentwood residents and fighting to protect us in front of ruthless developers and applicants without merit. Her priorities were always the residents and application and implementation of general plan, exactly what a planning commissioner should do and be focused on. Just recently, she made great cases against Brighter Gate Development, St. Anne's School Project, Rainflow Express Car Wash Approval Extension, while supporting and at the same time projects that truly benefit our community. And I would love to see her continuing the great work she did for Brentwood and its residents. Secondly, I would like to express support for Clayton Peddy. He's a solid member of our community, being involved with Boy Scouts, Brentwood Unified School District Measure B, Citizen Oversight Committee, and several other community involvements that I've learned he's part of. He's very active even in his neighborhood, helping with very true research and spreading the word on various projects impacting the community. I also had the pleasure of talking to Clayton on a couple of occasions, and I was impressed on how informed and well prepared he was on the matters discussed, the amount of research he did, and his ability to communicate relevant information. His business acumen comes through in the way he speaks and how he analyzes and explains the issues. I believe Brentwood will be lucky to have Clayton as the next planning commissioner, and I really encourage you to.
The speaker's time was up. I'm sorry, the speaker's time was up. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. Margaret, are there any other speakers for public comment at this time?
I have no additional speakers with their hands raised.
Okay, so at this time then we will close public comment. We will now take a 5-minute recess so that we can move over to the other link. Members of the public may move to the video feed on the city's website to view the remainder of the meeting. And so we will be in recess for the next 5 minutes, and we'll move over to the other link.
Bear with me, I'm working on moving over council members. I think I'm just waiting for Councilmember Rary. I'll go ahead and send her the link.
My apologies. My city email dropped off of my computer, so I have no access to it from my computer. So
Well, we can see you well and hear you loud and clear, so that's all great. So at this time, we will, it appears that the Zoom meeting is active. Margaret, do we know if the public can view the interviews on the city webpage?
Yes, the stream is live on the webpage.
Okay, thank you. So at this time then, we will move into interviews and consideration of recommendations for appointment of commissioners to the Planning Commission, and I will turn it to City Manager Tim Ogden to explain the process.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The process will be very similar to what you did recently, but I'll go ahead and read through the script so that the public is also aware of what the process is. So tonight you'll be interviewing the applicants for the Planning Commission, and pursuant to the rules that you agreed to prior to the meeting, the Mayor and Council provide the City Clerk with questions to ask the applicants. Each applicant will be asked the same 5 questions and will have up to 3 minutes to answer each question. Limited follow-up questions may be permitted by the Mayor based on available time. The applicants are currently in a holding pattern and meeting in a separate breakout room that does not permit them to listen to another applicant's responses. And they are invited to remain on the honor system, that they will not be using another device to listen to another applicant's response. Once interviews have concluded, there's an opportunity for the council to discuss the candidates and then be asked to verbally provide the Mayor with your choices for the 2 positions in order from first to last. The Mayor will then provide his 2 recommendations from first to last to the Council for appointment to the Planning Commission. The Council will then hold individual votes on each of the Mayor's recommended appointments. And this is all consistent with state law that the Mayor makes those recommendations. If a recommended applicant receives 3 votes, then he or she is appointed to the Planning Commission for the recommended term. If less than 2 applicants are appointed to the Planning Commission, then the Mayor may recommend appointing another applicant tonight or request that the reopening for the vacant positions be re-advertised. City Clerk has drawn the applicants' names in random order, and they will now be brought into the interview breakout room one at a time for your interviews. Margaret?
My apologies, I'm getting used to the different muting function on my phone. The first applicant is Anita Roberts, and I'll admit her to the room now.
Good evening, Dr. Roberts. It's kind of you to join us this evening. Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you just fine. Thank you.
Wonderful. We can hear you as well. So this evening, I know that you're familiar with the process. We are going to be asking each of the applicants for our Planning Commission position the same questions. Each of our council members will ask the same question to everyone, and we will be awaiting your answers. And then tonight we will be making a decision as to which applicants will be appointed. So at this time, I will turn the floor to Councilmember Mendoza for the first question.
Really quick, Mayor, can I interrupt really quick? I want to apologize. I made copies of everything except the questions, and I'm actually using my phone because I don't use a computer at home. And I was driving in a little bit late, so I don't have the questions in front of me. Is there any way, Mayor, that you could read off my question? And once again, I apologize for that. I just, I didn't make a copy of the questions. I have everything else but that.
Do you want me to text it to you? We can text it to you.
But I'm using my phone, so that's why I'm using my phone right now. So I'm not really tech savvy, but I mean, you could text it to me, but I mean, I won't, it won't be able to show me, I guess, here on the screen. I don't know how that works.
So I'll be happy to ask your question.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that.
Sure. So Councilmember Mendoza.
Yes. Hello, Commissioner Roberts. Nice to see you again. I mean, you are on the commission, so I know you know a lot of this. It's usually for new people, but I know, I just want to understand your knowledge of how you do your research when a project comes up. So thinking about a specific project, what did you do to learn more about the recent land use project, and what resources did you use?
Well, we were given a packet. So I have no knowledge prior to the packet coming out, but we're given a packet probably a good week before we meet, thereabout. And I read through the packet. And one of the resources I have is actually our land use document. Make sure that it ties with that. And oftentimes what I will also do is get in my car and go to the location where the proposed project is scheduled to launch, or perhaps have a design review, or whatever the issue might be as it regards that particular project. So there's a lot going on. And I will also, from time to time, well, more often than not, I will call the planning department and I will speak with them. They are a great resource, and they are always willing to share what it is that I'm not able to find on my own.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councilmember Meyer.
Good evening, Commissioner Roberts. First, the chance to speak with you. Thank you for joining us. What would be the top 3 sources of input to help to feed into your planning decisions? How do you force rank your the decision-making process? From what sources?
Well, certainly going to our manual, our guide, our planning guide is probably the first to make sure that it's compliant. Second, I keep my ear to the ground as it relates to the residents here in the community. I think that's very important. I am also a resident of Brentwood, so I try to be very open-minded, but I'm trying to also hear what the residents in the community, especially in neighborhoods, might feel toward a project coming up in their neighborhood. And then again, I will from time to time consult with my colleagues on the commission. So those are the 3 things that I tend to wean from.
Okay. And in follow-up, can you describe your response or the action you would take if resident feedback is contrary to what you personally think is the best decision about a proposed project?
Well, I try to keep, I'm quite analytical, perhaps over analytical, but I try to be fair and open-minded. And there have been a few projects that have come before me or the commission that the community was feeling one way, and looking at the public, and I do go back and forth with the Department of Public Works. I will go through a couple of steps. Public Works, Fire Department, Police Department. There are quite a few resources that might come into play that perhaps the community is not looking at. They're looking at one picture, and I'm looking at the picture that sides on safety, which to me is key, long-term.
Great, thank you.
I hope that answered your question.
I think so. I think it was just more a matter of what do you do when the residents don't necessarily agree?
Yeah. Oh, well, I stick with what is compliant. If the residents, and now I'm catching what you're saying. So if the residents are feeling one way about something, I will always side on the side of compliance. So, and perhaps they don't have that information.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Reary.
Yes, good evening. What have you done to prepare yourself for the role and responsibility of being a planning commissioner? And I think you've covered some of that along the way. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
Well, okay, so I think that I listen to what others have to say, and that's a big space. That's the fire department, that's the police department, that's planning, that's the residents, not in this particular order, but I try to listen to what others have to say. Having knowledge or understanding of the community issues and ordinances is big for me. Again, being fair and open-minded as I'm reading through some of the documentation and hearing what others have to say. Coming to the commission meeting prepared and having the ability to communicate. Those are the things that I do to ready myself for what's in front of me.
And why do you believe you're more qualified for this appointment than the other applicants?
Oh, I don't know that I'm more qualified. I would never go down that path. I'm qualified. I don't know that I'm going to ever suggest that I'm more qualified because I believe we all have a role to play. So I would not go down that path.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Roberts, this next question is the question that the Vice Mayor had sent in, and it is this. The commission is responsible for design review, approval of some new development, including architecture, landscaping, and lighting. Describe your decision-making process for a design review application that is opposed by the property owners or residents for reasons that are not design related.
So I can think of one project that came before the commission. I hope I'm answering the question that you're asking. It had come up for a second time, and the design review that came before us had changed dramatically. We had voted on one set of designs, and it came before the commission for whatever the reasons were a second time, and the designs had changed. And so with that regard, when things like that change, we haven't had the time to study exactly what the impact might be with that particular change. And so I do believe there were quite a few conditions that we put in place relative to that particular design review that did not go forward as is when it was presented a second time.
Vice Mayor, was that an answer to the question?
Yes, thank you. Once again, thank you, Mayor, but thank you for answering the question, Anita.
You're welcome.
And we're down to the last question, which is from me. Please explain the duties of the Planning Commission.
Oh, well, how much time do you have? No, I'm just playing. I want to say that I believe that the duty of the Planning Commission is to help design and execute suitable policies for economic development in the city of Brentwood. That's the short answer. The longer answer for me would be to act as an advisory group to the municipal governing body, which is City Council, on issues and policies related to planning, the land use regulations, and community development.
That was very concise for a very multifaceted answer. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Are there any other questions at this time from council to Dr. Roberts that are not on the list before we interview the next applicant? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Dr. Roberts. Margaret will help you transition back into the waiting area, and we'll interview the next applicant. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The next applicant is Clayton Peddy, and I'll admit him to the room now.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Fantastic. Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Peddy. Thank you for joining us tonight. And I'll go quickly over the process that we'll be going through right now. Each of the council members will ask you the same question that they asked all of the other council or all of the other applicants. And then we will be making a decision tonight as to who will be our choice for the appointment to the Planning Commission. And I just want to make sure you can hear me well.
I can hear you great. Thank you.
Great. And we can hear and see you well also. So at this time, I will turn the floor to Councilmember Mendoza for her question.
Great. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Peddy.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us. My question is, I want to learn more about your knowledge around Brentwood developments. Thinking about a specific project, what did you do to learn more about the land use and what resources did you use?
No, thanks. This really kind of relates a little bit to my motivation for applying. Around town, talking with various people, I heard a lot about people's opinions, right, of various projects and kind of what's going on with them. From this last year, a couple come to mind. One of them is one comment I heard a lot around car washes and gas stations, and the other one is a little bit about some of the apartments and other high density housing. Thinking about those projects, one of the things that came to my mind is these are exactly the projects, of course, that are going in front of the Planning Commission. And I thought it was really important to research them, right? Find out more about them. I think it's easy to have opinion. It's much harder to act on that. And one of the things I did to research that is obviously looking at things like the Brentwood General Plan, that was really important. But I'll tell you, even more informative to me was that as a layperson, right, to this process, I started utilizing some of the resources and research that's out there. The state of California, I thought, had a really good section on local government and things like the planning and research. For at first, you think, oh, this is going to be very government-like, but in essence, it's written for the layperson. And I found that really informative. And it had the topics that I'm interested in as well. Not only just the general plan, but looking at the transportation, land use, economic development, right, quality of life. Those are exactly the topics that I'm interested in as well. Now, from there, there's a lot of resources, of course, they offer. And you look at various nonprofits and, of course, some of the opinions that are out there, but thinking about whether it's, the League of California Cities, the California Redevelopment Association, so on, so forth. There's a lot of research and resources out there. And so I found that very valuable. So looking at those, specific projects, that's what I was interested in, is the process of how you get from, land use, I want to, do something with that, and how is it going to meet the needs of the community? And that was just really important to me. And understanding, that process. I've got a lot to learn. I'll admit that. I'm really interested in learning more about that process. So I think, if selected, I want to make sure that, I'm, impartial, I'm listening, empathetic, but also leading, right? And I think that's what the community really needs, is they need some, leadership and some, definitive decision making that's going to happen within the Planning Commission.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Councilmember Meyer.
Thank you for joining us, Mr. Peddy.
Thank you.
What would be the top 3 sources of input to feed into your planning decisions? Meaning, basically, how do you force rank what you take to before you vote?
I like to balance, right? I think that's critical. But if I have to look at a few things, I'll tell you what's kind of top of my mind. One of the big things top of my mind is the environment. I think that's really important. Unfortunately, we don't tend to see the damage done to the environment until years later. It's not obvious, in many cases. And I think understanding both the impact, but also understanding that, we need to move forward with development as well is really important. Number 2, I'm thinking about quality of life. I mentioned that before, but I think that's one of the big draws to the city for many, many families. Being here in the Bay Area, there's a lot of choices, if you will, but quality of life is one of the big ones. that I know when I talk with everyone and I say, oh, I'm from Brentwood, the first thing they talk about is, things like that's where you pick the cherries, right? Thinking about that, you realize it's not the cherries as much as a lot of people are saying, I wish I could have lived in Brentwood. That's why I'm going to visit. And so I think that's really important. I would say, the third one that, and this is one that I think is very tangible because I hear this a lot and it impacts my family as well. And that's something that is traffic, traffic and congestion. And I'll tell you why. That is probably the first indicator that the planning has gone awry. When I think about why we plan, it's to avoid, right, these sorts of these things. And so when I see traffic or traffic issues, it's an indicator that we should have spent probably more time on planning. So it's an early indicator. And that's why it's important to me. Thinking environment is probably a late indicator that we've done it wrong. But in between that, what's bookend? Those are bookends. Quality of life's right there in the middle. And I think that's what's going to affect most people in Brentwood.
Thank you. In follow-up,
sure.
Describe your response or the action you would take if resident feedback is contrary to what you personally think is the best decision about a proposed project.
Well, this is where I have to deal with this a lot, as a leader. It was mentioned in my application, one of the things in the community I serve, with the Boy Scouts. And as a leader, I've got to make a lot of decisions. Some of them are unpopular. Some of them, it's easy to make the popular decisions. It's very hard to be a leader. I will say this. I would have to, one, keep an open mind. I know that within the commission, there's rules, there's regulations, there's law. I need to listen to staff. And I also need to look for paths forward. I think sometimes opposition, with the citizens, is an opportunity to listen, but then look for changes, modifications, or some compromise that could be made. At the end of the day, I will say this. I have a very strong ethical value, and I would choose what's best for the community. And that would be my overriding decision.
Great. Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Rary.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, how you doing?
So you kind of answered my question. So I'm gonna say the question, but then I'm gonna ask something else.
Okay.
What have you done? My question was, what have you done to prepare yourself for the role and responsibility of a planning commissioner? And you said that you've looked at our general plan, you've looked at the League of California Cities, you've looked at the planning at the state level. What specifically have you done within the city part? What have you just looked at the general plan? Have you looked at why decisions were made? Have you been watching planning commission meetings to determine what actually goes into their decisions? Have you read through the agendas? What of those things have you done?
Okay, no, that's a great question. So there's a couple of things. What is nice is, of course, everything is online, so it's very accessible. And I know recently, of course, we've been online and streaming, so being present is not always possible. A couple of things. One is researching and reading the actual documents. Some of them are very plain, but the staff recommendations and the staff of what they're presenting in terms of materials is very relevant to this. If you look at the minutes specifically to each meeting, of course, you can see exactly, not only the motions, those are interesting, but you can also see, the for and the against. I think that was the question asked about citizens and how, there's people speaking against. And you see that a lot of against, yet it still passes. Then you need to watch the video. And I think what you see there is, from a planning commission perspective, what is most impressive is when commissioners are planned, prepared, and have actually researched the facts. I think that's great. And where it's not apparent, it's asking those critical questions. So I think that's something that I learned is it's not just, show up. It's going to be a lot of work to be prepared, be available, working with both staff and the community. to understand really what you're talking about and what you're about to vote on. I think that's the critical part. So when I'm watching that and preparing, that's what I'm thinking of. I think I also learned that there's a lot I need to learn. And I know I've said that before, but I think that's really, key. Working on a board like for example, Brentwood Union on Measure B, being on a public board, great, I have that experience. This is not that. That is really advisory. This is a step up in terms of decision-making, working with the staff, the city council, right, in that advisory position, but really also assuring that the general plan is implemented as stated. So to me, that's when kind of preparing, I looked back and said, well, what would I do to be ready for when issues come before me? And that was a big part of my research, knowing that I would be learning a lot moving forward.
Okay, that's great. But I do, now you talked about looking at the staff recommendation and you looking at the minutes and watching it, but do you read the actual document? Or did you just look at the staff recommendation?
No, I think there's the proposal, right? Reading the proposal, right? That was really critical. But also I spent time reading the actual development plans. So if I look back like the 2012, or I look back at previous plans, I see, we've been reading what's written down and what was decided previously for the intention of going forward. So I spent time doing both of those.
Okay. And my final question on that is, why do you believe you are more qualified for this appointment than the other applicants?
I think there's probably a lot of great applicants, in Brentwood who really would be great for this board. There's three things that kind of come to my mind. Number one, I mentioned before the ethics. It's the one thing I have is my name. So, having that high ethical standard, it's not just here in the community, but it's also things that I do at work or things that I'm doing in the community. That really leads to, I think, the next big thing, which is leadership. Being a leader means that you're not only making decisions, but you're being prepared, you're doing your pre-reads, you're being accessible, right? All of that's really important, to make those decisions. And then, the leadership, where does that come from? One thing at work, I'm very much known as working well with others. One of the top duties I have is actually taking two different opinions and working through that, coming up with a solution. By trade, I'm a computer engineer, so that's that kind of analytical mindset. But working with the people, right, is where I really excel. The third one is, it's so underrated, I think, talking about working with others. I see that, highlighting things like the key issues, asking the right questions, anticipating the type of information, right, that's going to be needed is a big part of the job as well. And I think thinking through my project work, both in my professional life, but also in my community service. And again, that stems a lot from, doing, whether it's environmental cleanup with like Marsh Creek cleanup, working with, the scouting for food, planning these sorts of events for hundreds of people, and then make that successful. To me, that's what's prepared me, for this position. And I think that's why I'll be very successful and I'll be a great candidate.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Peddy, and let me move here. I'm sorry, my screen there we go. I can see everyone now.
Great.
The next question, I'm going to ask the Vice Mayor quickly. Do you still want me to read your question, or were you able to get a copy of it, Vice Mayor?
No, I don't have a copy, Mayor.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, Mr. Peddy, this question is the one that the Vice Mayor sent in, and it is this. The Commission is responsible for design review approval of some new development, including architecture, landscaping, and lighting. Describe your decision-making process for a design review application that is opposed by the property owners or residents for reasons that are not design related.
Okay. So, again, coming in as a layperson, from a process perspective, it's one of the things I know I'm going to have to learn. But I will tell you that I would look at it as, number one, you have the scenario is something's coming in opposed. Number one, be fair, focusing on the big picture. I think too often when I hear from the scenario kind of a strong opposition, it's a lot of its personalities, maybe misconceptions. So it's one of the things we have to break through. So I want to be prepared and look at what's the big picture. I'm thinking about, I need to follow the law, right? That's going to be a big and important part of this as well. It's not, like you said, it's not just based on design, right? There's more to it than that. And I think that's one of the things I'm going to have to be looking at. Maybe thinking about the options. I've mentioned this before, but a lot of times it's that you have to get to that root of the opposition. And are there options that would be amenable to both parties, right? I think that's a big part of it. And I think lastly, it's just open communication, asking questions, wanting the kind of transparent answers. I think a lot of times that's going to be one of the key parts of the job as well. So again, thinking about it kind of from top to bottom is be open-minded. I'm thinking about what's fair, what is big picture, what is it the goals we're trying to achieve. I already mentioned things that I'm really considerate of: the environment, quality of life, thinking about the traffic, right, bringing those into play. And then coming back into, are there options, listen, research, things like the law, general plan, what can we do, to move forward. So that's, I'm sure, not an official process, but it's the way I'm looking at how I would, approach it from a mindset.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you answering that question, and that was good for me, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank
you very much.
Mr. Peddy, we come to the last question.
Okay.
It was the one from me, and it is this: please explain the duties of the Planning Commission.
Okay. At the end of the day, I think I've touched on a few of them already, but I think, I see there's three main duties, amongst many others. But one of them is being an advisory board. It's finding out the facts, the options, again, working with the staff and community, and having that true advisory role. We know that decisions, made by the Planning Commission, can always be appealed. They need to be upheld, but it's that advisory role. Looking at ensuring, and I think we talked about this, the general plan. I think that's what's fair. What residents, I talk to people about this. They don't know all the terms. When I talk about, this is the way, the plan looks, a lot of that is common sense, makes sense. It's what they wanted to come to Brentwood for, and I think that's super important. I think the third thing that I think is really important is, again, being that decision-making body. There's a couple things that I'm thinking about. It's how, from a planning process, how do we truly plan? These aren't just random projects that pop up. There's real planning. That's the name of the commission. How do we save money? How do we set those expectations? We talked about that scenario of people opposing. So how do we set expectations between the community and obviously the people who are submitting the proposals? Improving economic development, right? I think that's a big part of that decision making. And obviously it's that reaching consensus. I think that's kind of common in all the questions you've given me, is that consensus has to be made, and that's an absolute duty of that board. So those are some of the top things I'm thinking of for the duties of the board.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, that is all of the written questions. Is there any questions? Are there any questions that council members would have that were not written that you would like to present to this applicant?
I have a question. You mentioned the staff recommendation. How do you feel about when staff recommends something, but you feel different? Is that going to be difficult for you, or? No,
I do this all the time. So I think the key is it's keep asking the questions and be available. I will say this: one thing I will not do is just take recommendations verbatim, whether it's pro or con, and not make sure my questions are answered. So I think that's what alleviates my my thought process in that way, is saying whether I agree or disagree. The key part to me is, did I fully understand what they were talking about? I think that's probably the source of most misinformation. It's simply I misread it. I put my own lens or filter on it, and I didn't ask enough questions. So I think that's a big part. I think it's also why it's so time consuming.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no more questions for Mr. Peddy, I'm going to turn this now. Mr. Peddy, what will happen is Margaret, our city clerk, will move you into the waiting area again.
Okay.
We will be making this decision tonight, and we greatly appreciate you joining with us. And thank you for the very thoughtful answers.
Well, thank you so much for your time as well. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
The final applicant is Dirk Zeigler, and I'll admit him to the room now. Just a moment.
Good evening, Mr. Zeigler, and thank you for joining us tonight. First of all, I want to make sure that you can hear us clearly.
I can hear you, so I'm assuming so.
Okay, we can hear you and see you as well. So I know you're familiar with this process, but I will describe it anyway. What we'll be doing tonight is making a recommendation and selecting planning commissioners for the Planning Commission. And you will be asked questions by all of the council members, the same questions that all of the other applicants were asked. And then we will make our decision. So I will turn this now to Councilmember Mendoza.
Hello, Commissioner Zeigler. You've been on the commission for a while, so this was probably going to be pretty easy for you. I want to learn more about your knowledge about Brentwood development projects. Thinking about a specific project, what did you learn more about the land use of it, and what resources did you use?
So what project and what resources did I use?
Yeah, when you're studying it before you go into session.
Well, I'll think of the project, but I'd say the resources, a lot of them were available. One, the city resources and talking to the folks within the city, but then there's also on the website, we also have our general plan and our land specific uses. We can go to that as another means to find information. So that's where I typically would go to ask questions. I'm just trying to think of, there's been a couple of the larger projects that I would say some of the larger home projects that definitely, call it controversial or not, but as myself as a planning commissioner, yes, public comment is extremely important, but as a planning commissioner, we are looking at our job as really to evaluate and then make recommendations to you, but evaluate the general plan, the land use, the zoning, and community development, all those things together when we go to make a recommendation for you. So I'd say, I don't want to say one specific project, but a couple of the larger housing projects without naming names, and looking at the land use and how those have been brought in front of us are ones that can get pretty complex. So you definitely need to do your research. And like I said, we have a great city staff that we can lean on, but then there's also the resources that we can pull from the city website.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Meyer.
Commissioner Zeigler, thank you for joining us tonight.
Sure.
Again, the question is a little bit different for you, given your experience and history. How would you rank your top 3 sources of input that feed into your planning decisions? And what would those be?
Well, again, when I look at any plan that comes up, I mean, I've got to take our job is to take our personal opinion out of it to start with. We need to go by, again, we look at our general plan, we look at the land use, we look at how does it tie into the community, how does it tie in around other related projects in that area. So those are the things that I'm going to look for first. And again, we also get input from community members. We have, I'd say over the last several 2 to 3 years, we definitely have gotten a lot more input from public, a lot more people that have been interested in the community and how things are developing. And truth be told, they have come in with a ton of information during public comment on things that you may or may not have known. They've been able to do a lot of research. Some people that are very good at doing research, more so than I think we've had to do in the past, which to me I think has changed me as a commissioner. I think when you look back 2014 or 15 when I came on the Planning Commission, projects have gotten, in a sense, a little bit more complex. There's a lot of things that when we first started had been approved years ago, and we were, whether it would be a home project or something that was just kind of, almost rubber stamping it because it had already been approved and they're bringing it back, where now a lot of the new projects are getting a lot of public input. And there's a lot of new laws that are coming into force, whether it's SB 9, 10, whatever, that's going to affect a lot of our decisions, or how we can make decisions, I should say.
And you just fed entirely into my follow-up question. Thank you. Describe your response or the action you would take if resident feedback is contrary to what you personally think is the best decision about a proposed project.
Well, it's easy. I've sat on this commission long enough, and I've been involved in this community enough that I can take my public opinion out of something. That may not always be the most popular decision, whether it be with the public, with the city themselves, or with council. That's why we have 5 different people on the Planning Commission that have 5 different ideas or thought processes, and we have different means of researching and things like that. So I think I'm not swayed by an outside source. I'm going to take information and come to my own decision with it. Now, will I lean on others to get additional information or insight? Of course, but that's not going to sway me because I may or may not like a specific project personally. I still have to abide by the governing rules of our body and what we're supposed to be doing as a planning commission.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilmember Rary.
Thank you. Good evening, Dirk. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you doing?
So, this one, it's something you're already doing. So, what have you done to prepare yourself for the role and responsibility of being a planning commissioner?
Well, I think it's trying to, again, it's taking input from listening to the community. Like I said, I kind of touched on that before. But there's also a lot of changes that are going on, as we know, whether that be from legal standpoint and different laws that are coming into play, whether it be, obviously we get a lot of insight from the city that sends us, planning commission, insight from all around the state, whether it's attending some of the different seminars that we're allowed to go to. So it's really just trying to utilize all the resources that are out there that are available. Things are the one constant thing is change. Again, 5 years ago, I would probably look at things a little different than I do now, which is not a bad thing. Like I said, I think in a way, and this is not in a bad way, but council as well as planning are under more scrutiny than they ever been in this city as it continues to grow and evolve in our we've got a lot of dynamics going on in our community right now, and a lot of opinions, right, wrong, or indifferent. Not saying they're wrong or right. It's just a matter of we've got to, really make sure that whatever we're doing, we're using the resources that are available to us, staying within the confines of, in this specific job is within the Planning Commission, to do our job and to make our recommendations to City Council.
Okay, and why do you believe you are more qualified for this appointment than the other applicants?
I can't say I'm more qualified than anyone. I don't know if I can make a bold statement like that, but I can say that I do have experience. I've been around. I've seen a lot of projects that have come before us. I have not been afraid to say no to large projects that have come that might be controversial. I'm a local business owner, so I understand the importance of small business and needs. And so as we see projects that come before us, I can get a better understanding of what they are dealing with in a community. Because of my profession, risk management, I can see a lot of perspective when different plans come before us, and just looking at those types of things, I think I can have a different set of eyes, knowing I would say I'm a professional risk management person. So that to me is a very big advantage when reviewing different types of projects that are coming before the city.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Zeigler, the next question is from the Vice Mayor. He does not have a copy of it, so I'm going to ask it on his behalf, and he can clarify if the questions need some clarification. But this is his question. The commission is responsible for design review approval of some new development, including architecture, landscaping, and lighting. Describe your decision-making process for a design review application that is opposed by the property owners or residents for reasons that are not design related.
Well, I can honestly say this has come before us, and that is one thing that I think we can do a better job with at the onset of a meeting, or if it happens during the meeting. I understand public opinion may not always like what's going in and around them, and I think it's important to listen to them. But if a design meets the criteria, it meets the land use, it meets the zoning, from the Planning Commission standpoint, those types of projects from our point of view would be approved, but then it's ultimately the city council's decision whether or not they can allow the project to continue. But if you're looking at a design review and it checks all the boxes, now again, our job is going to be looking at the surrounding and making sure it fits in, whether it's like type materials, whether it's just in terms of overall design and aesthetics, or the landscaping that's in and around that meshes with those other areas. Those are the things that we're looking at to make sure that those types of projects do fit. But like I said, if the design, if it's checking the different boxes in my opinion, from the Planning Commission standpoint, we would approve it. And then ultimately, if council feels for whatever reason that it doesn't fit, or due to a large public outcry per se, then that's their decision if they want to deny that project.
Thank you, Mr. Zeigler, for answering that question. And once again, thank you, Mayor, for asking the question.
Okay, Mr. Zeigler, the final question is from me, and it is this. Please explain the duties of the Planning Commission. You've touched on it already, but if you could go into more detail, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I pretty much, I think I kind of summarized it throughout the different, through my different responses. But like I said, we're really an advisory board in a sense to City Council. So when projects are coming to us, we're going to look at, do plans meet our general plan? Or do they fit the general plan? Do they fit the land use designations? Obviously community development, and looking at to me, it's a holistic approach of looking at projects as they come before us. Ultimately, you as the council have the final decision on any type of project. But I think from our standpoint, we're going through and making sure that these projects are harmonious with their, what's surrounding them. And like I said, kind of touching on, really, we're working within the confines of general plan, land use, and to me, the harmony with around that specific project.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions not on the list that any of the council members would like to ask Mr. Zeigler before we move forward? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Zeigler, what will happen now is Margaret will put you in the holding room, and we will come back for council discussion. And tonight we will be making our recommendation for the filling of these seats on our Planning Commission. So thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.
Okay. Now that we've gone through that process, we'll open it up for council discussion of the applicants. Is there any discussion you'd like to have before I ask for your top 2 candidate referrals?
How long has Commissioner Zeigler been a commissioner?
I believe he's been on the commission since 2015.
I know he mentioned 2014, so I was wondering, I was like, is it longer than that?
It's either 2014 or 2015.
Okay. So 8 years. And we don't, is there any commission that has term limits at all or no?
That's a good question for our attorney.
I'm sorry? Karen, did you say something?
Just the Park and Rec Commission.
Why does Park and Rec have term limits but no other commission?
Because when we set it up originally, we wanted, I think we had looked at planning commissioner. I think there may have been a planning commissioner who had been on for like 20 years. And so we had wanted to make sure that there was fresh blood. They'd have to be out. It wasn't that they couldn't be back on it. They'd have to be out for 1 year, but their terms were also 3 years long. These are only 2 years. So it would be 9 years before they would have to step off. And they'd have to step off for a year, and then they could do 3 more terms. And then step off for a year and do 3 more terms.
Yeah. And that's Parks and Rec you're talking about, not
that was Parks and Rec, and we, I think it was because we had a planning commissioner who had been on for so long, and we were trying to make it so that somebody wasn't there for 20 years.
Well, is there any discussion on our recommendations, your recommendations before you give me your top 2 recommendations?
For me, I just wanted to say, I think it's always interesting to me how reading the applications and seeing something on paper is so very different from having interactive discussion with someone in an interview kind of process. It really, it's never what I think it's going to be, which is a good thing. It means you're challenging what you thought you were going to lean towards, and you're maybe leaning in something else. And I think that's a good process. I think it means we're doing something right. But it is interesting.
I agree. I think that this process really does get both of the sides of who a person is, not just on paper, but what that translates to their life experience. And you can really tell a lot about a person by what their focus is on these items. I will say that it's nice to have the level of applicants, the quality of applicants that we have. It's much nicer to have a hard decision on these than a simple decision on these. And we've got some really tremendous applicants again for this. One of the things that at least a couple of them touched on was that this year there have been a tremendous amount of new laws that we're going to be dealing with on local control issues, which according to conversation at our last council meeting, all of us are extremely concerned and very protective of local control issues. And the trend has been from the state level and from sometimes even the federal level that those local decisions are being chipped away at every turn of the year. We seem to be losing more and more of our local control in our community. And so those are decision-making points that are absolutely essential for our planning commissioners to be able to navigate and to apply to the decisions that we make in our community. There are many things that personally that I have seen the limits on city council and on the planning commissioners over the years, that we have really no legal say in some of the things that are being handed down from the community. So we really, in my opinion, we really have to have commissioners that have their finger on the pulse of the community, as well as their eye on how to navigate what's coming down from the state. Those are two parts of a decision-making process that are absolutely essential for a successful planning commissioner.
And for me, it's extremely important and imperative to not only understand the laws and understand where you, what you can legally get away with, quote unquote, but also to take resident feedback in and to really pay attention to what the community is feeling and how they individually will be impacted by all the decisions that you make. I think that there's a delicate balance there, but I do support planning commissioners that push back and question things and that don't just read a report and say that's what we need to do. I think there needs to be that challenge about, is this really truly best for the residents? And if it isn't, how can we make it work? How can we make it work for all parties, or still follow be in compliance, but really the quality of life thing that was discussed, I think that was important too.
And yeah, and it was discussed that someone looked at the state laws and the state website, and that, I mean, I've never even gone to the state website and looked at their stuff, but what concerns me is that we do have all these laws happening, and we might change them, we might not. And whatever we plan for, we should plan for exponentially, right? So if we say one house, it could be 6, and there's nothing we can do about it. So it's just, that's concerning to me, wanting to make sure that the people that we get are going to spend the time and the effort doing the research and making sure that they're mitigating any future risk. That's concerning to me, that they understand the ramification of every single decision they make when it comes to housing from now on. And, you know, there's more bills coming this year. So making sure that they understand that all.
I think what's important to me as well is that not only listening to our residents that call in, which I think is very important, but I think it's also important that we have people in these positions that are out there in the community that are talking to residents that don't speak, or communities that are not comfortable in calling and things like that. So to me, their involvement in the relationship within the community is very important as well, because I think at times we have residents that don't call or they're not participating. It doesn't mean that they don't have a voice and they should be listened to, or they don't have an opinion. So I think for me, it's really important that not only to listen to the people that are calling, because that is important because they are residents, but it's also to have someone sitting in these positions that are out there that are part of different community things and that have been around and that are really networking and working with the large community and not just one specific portion of our community. So that's really important to me as well.
Can you define networking? Like networking with who?
No, I don't mean networking like working with anybody specific, but I think if you're sitting at a restaurant or you're going to different portions of our community to be able to see some or talk to some of the people who may have different needs than others. So that's what I'm in regards to networking, and, you know, maybe working with some of the nonprofits or working with some of the groups out there that are out there working directly with some of our residents, I think is also important, because it gives you time to communicate and listen to another portion of the community that a lot of times are not participating. They're not calling, they're not engaged, which I'll be honest with you, I wish they'd be more engaged, but obviously they're not. And it's great to, if you're out there, at least still listening and hearing from those people as well.
Yeah, and I was impressed with the one person who said that they go out to the site to look at it, because there was only one person who said they actually went out and looked at the site, which was nice. So it's good that they go out and maybe talk. I don't know if the person didn't say they talked to them or not, but that was, I like that too.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so at this time, if there's no more council discussion, if I could get your 2 top recommendations, and I'll start with Councilmember Mendoza.
Yes, Anita Roberts is my first choice, and Clayton Peddy is my second choice.
Thank you. Councilmember Meyer.
Anita Roberts and Clayton Peddy.
Councilmember Rary.
Anita Roberts and Dirk Zeigler.
Okay, Vice Mayor Rodriguez. You are muted if you're talking.
I'm sorry about that, Mayor. Anita Roberts and Dirk Zeigler.
Right. And my first choice would be Dirk Zeigler and Anita Roberts. I think both of them are invaluable. So at this time then, Margaret, if you can tally up these numbers.
Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, I can. So we have
And Mayor, I didn't know that we were doing it in 1 or 2, but Dirk Zeigler would be my first and Anita Roberts, if that's what we're doing.
Okay. So we have 5 for Anita Roberts. We have, and 1, 2, 3, 4 of those are the first choice. And we have 2 for Mr. Clayton Peddy. Both of those are the second choice for Mr. Peddy. And then we have 3 for Dirk Zeigler. 2 of those are the second choice. 1 is the first choice, so that's 3. So the top 2 vote getters on this are Anita Roberts with the 5 votes and Dirk Zeigler with 3. The numerical count on that would be 6 on the preference choice for Anita Roberts and 5 on the preference points for Dirk Zeigler. And Mr. Peddy had 4 on the preference points. So I don't know that there's any more discussion, but is there anyone that is satisfied, dissatisfied, would like to change their vote right now? And if not, then we do have the recommendations.
Mayor, I don't know if you had heard me, but, and I don't know if it even matters now, but I know that I would have Dirk as my number 1 and Anita Roberts as my number 2. I didn't know we were doing it in that type of order.
Okay, thank you. So that would raise his to 5. But okay, so the recommendations then, the top 2 vote receivers would be Anita Roberts and Dirk Zeigler. Based upon the application and the interviews and discussion, I will be at this point recommending appointment of Anita Roberts and Dirk Zeigler to our Planning Commission. So we're going to take a vote right now. And if I could have Margaret do a roll call vote. The first applicant, Anita Roberts. I recommend Anita Roberts as a successful applicant to the Planning Commission.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rary,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez,
Vice Mayor?
Yes. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Mayor Bryant.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay. And the second recommendation, I recommend applicant Dirk Zeigler as a commissioner, successful commission applicant. If I could get a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mendoza,
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Rary,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mayor Bryant.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay. So at this time, we are going to adjourn to the regular room, but I do need a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Have a first,
Second.
a second, a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mendoza,
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Rary,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez,
Aye.
Mayor Bryant.
Aye. We are adjourned, and we will see you in the main room here at 7 o'clock. Thank you so much for your great work. Welcome everyone to the January 11th, 2022 City Council Successor Agency meeting. It looks like we do have a quorum. Could I have a roll call, please, Margaret?
Councilmember Mendoza?
Here.
Councilmember Meyer?
Here.
Councilmember Rary?
Here.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Here.
Mayor Bryant?
Here. At this time, if you could all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, we will open public comments, and I'll turn it to you, Margaret.
At this time, the public is permitted to address the City Council on items that are not on the agenda. Items listed under presentations, informational reports, or on the consent calendar. Request for future agenda items, new request. Please save your comments for any other items that are on the agenda for that part of the meeting when you'll have the opportunity to provide them. I received no written public comments that were submitted prior to the meeting. If you wish to speak under public comment, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature. I'll call upon your name if provided and unmute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. While we encourage your comments, state law prevents the City Council from discussing items that are not on their meeting agenda, and if appropriate, staff will follow up on them. I do have 2 hands raised. I'll start with Danny Dorman, followed by Cinziana Todor. Mr. Dorman, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I am calling regarding a couple of things on the cassette calendar. And it's going to be item number 1 and I believe 6. I'm not looking at the paper right now. I'm curious as to how is things being put on the calendar? How is that done? I know it's done by staff, but it seems as though sometimes the important things on the consent calendar really should be discussed. I don't know why they even need to be pulled. So I don't know I would love to know what those parameters are. Specifically with the $250,000 man asking to have someone else sign off on his behalf. Maybe if he's talking about the acting city manager, and he needs that because he's acting as opposed to the actual city assistant city manager, that makes sense. But the way it's written, it just seems like he's looking for someone else to do his job. And if that's the case, well, then we can save $250,000. Anyway, thank you very much for your time.
The next speaker is Cinziana Todor.
Thank you, Margaret. Good evening again. This is Cinziana Todor, Brentwood resident. I would like to thank this council for voting in again, Mr. Zeigler. We're in for another 2 years of special interest support and, conflict of interest and non-participation. So congratulations. You know who you are, whomever is on point to take the heat for this. On top of that, consent calendar. I'm not gonna speak to specific items as a general comment. Stop hiding important items in the consent calendar. People are not stupid. Your constituents are not stupid. We have enough experience to read between the lines and realizing what city staff is trying to do. Incompetence at its best. So stop. And I want every single consent calendar item to be discussed individually as opposed to raising your hand and say, yeah, we pass everything. You know who you are on that regard too. and stop, city staff, stop wasting taxpayer money. Stop doing what government does best, wasting taxpayers' money. We see you and we don't hear you because we don't understand what you're trying to do with our money. And it's not for the best interest of the city and its residents. On top of that, Mr. Mayor, I want to know why you were not present at the conference for Contra Costa County mayors. I was in the public trying to speak on public comment. However, I was not able to do it because it's just one person per topic. Anyway, the point is you were not there. There's a thing called delegation of duty. You picked a vice mayor. Why was he not there? Why did City of Brentwood did not have representation there? I will go back and find out how many times this happened. So every single resident in Brentwood knows we are not represented and our interests are not represented. I don't know how you won and how you got in this seat. The point is you are there, you need to represent us. So you better figure out a way to have presence and our interests represented at county level. Thank you.
The next speaker is Rod.
Yes,
Rod,
thank
go
you.
ahead.
Thank you. I did want to echo what the first speaker said. In particular, item C6 appears to be a revision of the Brentwood Municipal Code. It's a complete rewrite of the chapter. I have looked at it today, but I think this is something the public needs to hear about. Whenever you're going in and actually changing the law, people have at least the right to hear a little bit about what changes are going into the law. It might be innocuous or it might be something more, but it's just something that people are going to care about, and I would certainly like to hear some discussion of it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no additional speakers with their hands raised.
Thank you. At this time, then, we will close public comments and we will move into presentations. And we do have item A1, a proclamation recognizing Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and I'm going to ask Councilmember Mendoza to present this.
Do we want to bring up Daphne for this yet, or after I say it?
We can bring her up, absolutely.
And I think that's Margaret. I think I see her. So hello, Daphne. I don't think your camera's on. Daphne and I and someone else had spoken about this proclamation, and it's very important to her as Daphne has a long history in working in civil rights. So thank you for everything you've done for us in the past. And now I'll read your proclamation. So whereas Desmond Tutu is one of South Africa's most well-known human rights activists, winning the 1984 Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts in resolving and ending apartheid. And whereas Tutu became the first Black Anglican Archbishop of both Cape Town and Johannesburg, known as the voice of the voiceless Black South Africans. He was an outspoken critic of apartheid. And whereas, in addition to the Nobel Peace Prize, Tutu has been bestowed numerous awards, including the Pacham Interis Peace and Freedom Award, the Bishop John T. Walker Distinguished Humanitarian Service Award, the Lincoln Leadership Prize, and the Gandhi Peace Prize. And whereas throughout his life, Tutu continued to champion human rights and equality for all people, both in South Africa and around the world. And whereas Tutu brought to prominence Ubuntu, a philosophy that captures former President Nelson Mandela's recognition that we are all bound together in ways that are invisible to the eye, that there is a oneness in humanity, that we achieve ourselves by sharing ourselves with others and caring for those around us. and is a model for forgiveness and reconciliation. And whereas Archbishop Desmond Tutu passed away at the age of 90 on December 26, 2021, having lived a life dedicated to human unity, justice, equality, and the fight against racism. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Brentwood hereby honors the life of Archbishop Desmond Tutu and his enduring message of human rights and equality for all people, dated this 11th day of January 2022. And I think Daphne had a few words she wanted to share with us. Do you want to unmute? You're muted. Can you unmute? I can't hear you. Margaret, do you know how to unmute her? Oh, there she goes. There you are.
Good evening, everyone. I really respect and appreciate you taking the time out of your demanding agenda to support this proclamation. I had the honor of meeting Desmond Tutu when I was in Cape Town in 2016 and went to hear a sermon of his at St. George's Cathedral and met him afterwards, and the energy of his life, his humanity, and his sense of humor just resonated so wonderfully. And the fact that he is connected to people all over the world. And I am so proud of Brentwood for being willing to stand up and support and honor who he was and who he will always be to so many of us. And I hope the work of the council will continue to move the city forward in ways that are meaningful to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Daphne.
Thank you, Ms. Muse, as well as Councilmember Mendoza for the presentation. We will move into item A2, a proclamation recognizing January 22 as Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And we have Dana Filkowski as well as Katrina Natale that will be receiving this from this proclamation from the city. And do we have both Dana and Katrina with us this evening?
You have Dana. Oh, look, I have the Hawaii background from my living room. Katrina is unavailable, but I will represent the task force. Thank you very much, City of Brentwood and council members.
Thank you so much. And so this is the proclamation. Whereas the crime of human trafficking violates an individual's privacy, dignity, security, and humanity due to the systematic use of physical, emotional, sexual, psychological, and economic exploitation, control, and abuse. And whereas the impact of human trafficking is wide-ranging, directly affecting foreign nationals as well as U.S. citizens and society as a whole, victims experience trauma, violence, manipulation, fraud, and coercion at the hands of their traffickers. And whereas the National Human Trafficking Hotline, 1-888-373-7888 of the National Human Trafficking Resource Center, is an important resource to report a tip or ask for help. And whereas from January 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2021, the National Human Trafficking Resource Center received 51,667 substantive phone calls, texts, emails, or online tip reports nationwide. And whereas Brentwood is not immune to human trafficking, and fighting exploitation and human trafficking is a shared community responsibility, now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Brentwood does hereby recognize January 2022 as Human Trafficking Awareness Month and urges all residents to counter injustice and fortify the commitment to pursue dignity and freedom for all people. Thank you so much, Dana, for all of your work. And I just want to add to our residents Our local police department, working in conjunction with federal agencies, county and state agencies, and nonprofit organizations, have made a real difference in the lives of several people in Brentwood that have been victimized by this. The statement that Brentwood is not immune to this is absolutely true. And it's up to every one of us to keep our eyes open make sure we're observing what's going on around us, because you could be the individual that makes the difference in a person's life who's being human trafficked. So thank you so much, Dana, for all that you do. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. And the city of Brentwood needs to know that your police department, the Brentwood Police Department, has done a remarkable job. There are 26 police agencies in this county, and Brentwood Police Department has taken a leadership role with the Human Trafficking Task Force. There are currently 6 active human trafficking prosecutions from the city of Brentwood investigated by your police department. Your police department has investigated the county's first labor trafficking case that is now set for trial in March. You should be tremendously proud of your police department for their leadership, for their innovation, for their compassion, and their partnership in the way that they have supported investigations that have gone to the federal level. They presented a case that was adopted by the United States Attorney's Office and the FBI for further investigation. It started in Brentwood. It's 3 kids that were being trafficked across multiple states. That is your police department. So the idea that this does not happen in Brentwood has been knocked out of the park by the work of, in particular, Sergeant Todd Orlando, Detective Jeff Agostino, and Detective Dustin Green. Their partnership with my office at the DA's office, in the task force, and partnering with victim advocacy groups to support victims who can move from being victims to becoming survivors and then hopefully overcomers of trafficking, has been nothing short of remarkable. And I want to commend the leadership of your city council that supports this police department, to let them not just be confined within their little city boundaries, but to recognize that this is a multi-jurisdictional problem. You're on the Highway 4 corridor, which is a means by which innocent people are being brought to and through your community to be exploited. And your department, and therefore your city, is really tremendously making a difference. And I have been proud to partner with them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your taking time to be with us tonight. So at this time, we will move on to item A3, a proclamation recognizing January 17th, 2022 as Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And I'm going to read the proclamation. Whereas the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is remembered for dedicating his life to an unyielding faith and passion for justice and racial harmony, and a strong commitment to his belief of freedom, equality, and justice for all. And whereas Dr. King endured imprisonment and adversity to achieve change that would alter the course of history with his leadership and practice of nonviolence, which continues to inspire this nation and the world to reaffirm the importance of education as the foundation to end prejudice and discrimination. And whereas Dr. King's accomplishments as a clergyman, Nobel Peace Prize laureate, author, and advocate for securing the enactment of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, the 1965 Voting Rights Act, and the 1968 Fair Housing Act, emphasize the principles of equality as a cornerstone of our democracy. And whereas we honor his legacy in observance of the Martin Luther King Jr. federal holiday, and we encourage all to observe this holiday by acts and deeds of service within the community. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Brentwood does hereby recognize January 17th, 2022 as Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and invites residents to join us in honoring the life and legacy of Dr. King's exemplary achievements. I want to thank our staff and thank our community for all of the steps that we take in implementing the ideals and principles that Dr. King lived and gave his life to bring to the forefront so that our generation could move it forward toward the perfection of the ideals of what our Constitution states, that all men and women are created equal. And I thank you all for all the steps that you take on a daily basis for these. Now we will move forward to informational reports from council, members, committees, liaisons, and staff. And I'll begin with Councilmember Mendoza.
Hello. Since the last time we met, I actually attended the Southern California local government group, their executive team call, and spoke on behalf of the initiative to overturn the land use measures that the state has passed. And the executive team supported it. Then the next day I attended the SCAG regional call, which is all of the local cities, all of the mayors and the counties, and spoke at that again. I think they had 547 comments. We were actually outnumbered probably 2-1, and we actually got their endorsement for the initiative 32-12, and they even brought in their big gun, Eric Garcetti, to speak against us, and we still beat him. I've been doing a lot of work around the oil and gas drilling. I had a meeting. We have a monthly meeting with youth, and they're from Oakley and Antioch, and they're actually going to have a rally on February 26th, and that will be over at the Antioch Water Park area. So anyone who is interested in fighting oil and gas will be having a rally there that day. And they would also like me to extend the invitation. This is an open group, and there is people attending from Parks and Rec from Oakley and Antioch and other groups in Oakley and Antioch. And they're also about sustainability and, you know, taking care of our compost. So if anyone from our city would like to join the calls, let me know. They are inviting anyone in the city to join, and the kids are awesome. I mean, there is no limits to what they can do. I did attend the mayor's conference with residents of the city where we are speaking and asking for all of the local mayors to support the Our Neighborhoods Voices initiative. Unfortunately, they do only let one person speak, which we found out. And then I attended the interagency meeting with the Brentwood Union, Liberty Union, LMC, the police department, and the fire department, and had a great meeting. It's great. We're starting to collaborate with them on the youth center and finding an appropriate location for a youth center. And they were really interested in what activities they could do there. So we shared our survey results with them. So it was great that they're interested, and hopefully we can get some more collaboration going with all of our agencies together. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Meyer.
Thank you. Since our December meeting, I attended Livable Cities overview of the Our Neighborhood Voices initiative meeting. The California Alliance of Local Electeds meeting had either discussions or distanced meetings or phone calls with residents with topics including the closure of city facilities due to the COVID outbreak, the State Route 239 project. Some people had questions around the Planning Commission appointments, engagement in council meetings, resources for the homeless, and some questions people had about consent items. Had a meeting with the Parks and Rec staff and the Liberty Theater Department to discuss a potential partnership in support of a performance to highlight tolerance and racial equity as a sort of learn-in, like a live performance, some songs from Hairspray, which focuses on those issues. And it would be done for K-8 students. So that's kind of in the beginning stages. A pretty exciting project. They're doing it in other cities. And I think our Liberty department, our theater department, is doing some pretty progressive work in trying to bring those messages to the youth of Brentwood, which is fantastic. I did attend the Contra Costa Mayor Conference. The East Contra Costa Community Alliance, I had a meeting with their coordinator about resources in East County, how to plan for strengthening and growing their network of nonprofits that work together to serve the people who are the most in need throughout East County, including, of course, Brentwood. We had our first Cal Cities Executive Board for Mayors and Council Members meeting, and that was in my role as the first vice president of the mayors and council members. Talked a lot about education and topics for roundtable discussion, some things that we hear from other council members that people would like to learn so that we can bring those to the forefront for discussion and training. And then had some other, continuing to have discussions around the Broderick apartment fire and how we can support the families. There's been other resources brought to the table for that. We're right now working on the protocols for fire. I can't think of my words right now. The carbon monoxide detectors and the fire alarms, that kind of thing, just kind of making sure everybody's in compliance with that. And again, continuing to work on some resources for those people as well. And that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rary.
Thank you. Since the last time we met, I attended the PAL board meeting. The Barbecue King Cook-Off, I believe it's in its 19th year, will be happening on Super Bowl Sunday, February 13th at Harvest Park Bowl. They are still taking applications for those who want to participate in putting your tried and true barbecue to the test to see if it's the winner of this year's contest. They're also looking for desserts, appetizers, and chicken. Oh, I'm sorry, the chicken is part of the barbecue part. There is also a golf tournament. I believe it's April 26th. It will be out at the Discovery Bay golf course. 100% of the proceeds this year will be benefiting PAL. It's the Anne Wangerman Memorial Golf Tournament. And they anticipate being able to have a full thing this year. Last year they had to scale back because of COVID. Hopefully they'll be able to go up to the whole 144 golfers, and that one was a lot of fun. I also spoke with some residents, one regarding planning commissioners. Another one was looking for place to store. There's a new nonprofit, ACT Senior Assistance, and they're looking at doing a clothing drive. And that clothing drive, they're looking for a place to store clothes, used clothes, which they'll turn in for cash. And so I connected them up with the city manager. I also attended Gail Leach's memorial. Gail Leach was an analyst for the city of Brentwood. There is a bench in City Park now, over by the Rose Garden. You've got a friend. Thank you for being a friend. And it's Gail Leach. She was a project manager of our civic center, of the parking garage, the community center, of the library, and will sorely be missed by everyone in the city. She was a great person, a lot of spunk, and it was a nice memorial. That's all that I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Rodriguez.
Yes, since our last meeting, I have met with different residents in regards to different issues going on in the northeast of Brentwood. I've also participated in the inter-district agency meeting. There was a lot of discussion around the COVID and different things that different groups were doing, like the Brentwood School District, Liberty School District, and also Los Menos College. We also were talking a lot about collaborations. It sounded like it was brought up with one of the school board members there at Liberty Union School District, and then everybody started discussing it, talking about it a little bit more in regards to how we could collaborate more in the future and even make things even better for all the different groups that were sitting in there. We also was brought up by one of the board members there at Brentwood Union School District in regards to the youth center and where we're at with that. So at that time, our city manager gave him a little bit of a quick update, but at the same time had mentioned that he would be able to send the survey information to the members of that meeting. So that's it. That's all for me right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Since the last time we met, I had a special meeting of the Habitat Conservancy Board, as well as met with some federal and international representatives dealing with the topic of our families, our family members, and our young people that are coming back from long-term stays in federal and local state prison facilities and youth facilities, and how to bring local programs to help integrate them into our communities again, and to help get them some training, help get them some education. If anyone has been familiar with family members or friends or neighbors that you know that they've gone to prison, they've paid their debt to society, and trying to get back into society sometimes is very discouraging, very difficult for our family members to find work, to find places to live, to contribute to our communities. And so this organization that bases themselves out of Chicago, I met with them for 2 days, and they have a lot of information. I will, once I get their information, I'll share it with our city staff and city council, and make some of the information available to any public that might be interested in that process as well. I also met for 2 days with some representatives in Northern California dealing with our state homeless issues. All of us know that these are very, very difficult, complex issues, but the core areas that were discussed and plans that are being worked on is providing facilities for mental health and drug abuse components of the homeless situation. The vast majority of people that are homeless and the unhoused in the state of California have either mental and drug abuse issues that they're struggling with, and finding a way for the state to provide an avenue for local jurisdictions and nonprofits to join cooperatively to provide resources and a long-term solution for these things is something that not only am I, and I know I've heard some of our council members express concern in the past as well about this, but there are numerous agencies all over the state that are working together to join, to present these ideas and thoughts to our leadership and our electeds at the state level. And so in addition to that, I've met with numerous residents regarding local issues, and 3 corporations that are looking for opportunities to connect with the city of Brentwood to bring their businesses and corporations here. And with that, that's all I have to report at this time. So at this time, we will move into consent calendar. And do we have a motion? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. We do have staff reports on our informational reports as well.
Yes, if you wouldn't mind, I just have 2 brief staff comments I wanted to add tonight to the agenda. One is I want to remind the public that we have a redistricting commission meeting this Thursday at 6 p.m. The agenda is on the city website. It does reflect about 20 potential maps that the redistricting commission is looking at and assessing, and will provide direction to staff and the demographer to come back at the meeting in February, where it's anticipated they would adopt a map, at least 2 maps to then forward to the city council. And then on March 3rd, city council has a designated special city council meeting where they will be considering the maps that are presented to them from the redistricting commission for approval. So I want to give the public lots of head start notice on that process. And then I've asked acting Police Chief Tim Herbert to give a brief update based on the recent fatality and murder that we had occur in the community, and allay any concerns from the community. So we'll invite Margaret to call up Acting Chief Herbert.
Good evening, there I am. Good evening, Mayor and honorable council members. I wanted to give you a quick update. As you know, we had a homicide on Sunday at about 4:30 over in the 160 block of Sycamore Ave. And I wanted to let you know we do have a suspect in custody. This was an isolated incident between family members that unfortunately ended up in a homicide. Our investigation is still ongoing, but I wanted to take the time to reassure the citizens that they are safe in that area and that this was an isolated incident. And we're hoping to present this case to the district attorney sometime later this week. So if there's any questions, I can take your questions.
Thank you.
Not, all right. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions from council to Acting Chief Herbert?
No, I just want to thank you for taking the time to come out and present to us, but also to the residents. I know that, a lot of the members of the community out there were concerned, and it's nice, well, obviously it's a sad situation, but it's nice to hear the police department state that, the public's going to be safe and things will be okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting Chief Herbert, for your time. We appreciate the report.
Thank you.
Okay, and City Manager, are there any further reports from staff?
No, that's it. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So at this time, then, we will move into the consent calendar.
Can I pull C1 and C6, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
And I'd like to pull C7.
Okay, do I have a motion for the remainder of the consent calendar?
Motion to approve the remaining consent calendar items.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rary?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Bryant?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
Okay, for consent calendar item C1, Councilmember Mendoza.
Yeah, this one has financial implications and who's responsible for finances. It also changes settlement claims that the city manager has authorization for from 25 to 50,000. So I guess, can we go through why we're making these changes, why they're necessary? Why is it something that has to happen? And how many instances over 25,000 are we having that they would cause a burden that we have to change the amount?
Staff?
Mayor and Council, I'll call on Carrie and then Will Alderman, who prepared the staff report, to respond to those questions.
Well, can I ask a question? I mean, it is your role, and I know someone's going to speak for it, but it's your role. So how do you feel about the changes in your role?
This was a policy that was in preparations before I came to the city, and it's been put on the back burner until now. So staff in the finance department work through ensuring all the policies are adhered to with all the fiscal policies, signature policies, et cetera. I have designated my signature authority when I've been out of town, and there are several different documents that I do delegate authority to where they're of minor consequence, if you will, to give more responsibility to those department directors. One of the examples I think I shared with you offline was, if we have a sewer line break and we need to get an emergency purchase order put in place to get a backhoe, I don't need to sign those every time, right? I can have a director or one of their managers or supervisors sign off on something like that. So there's some good value in adding where some of this authority is properly delegated. There have been several requests where I've denied them because I'm not comfortable with them. So it's really situational, but there's probably, 10,000 different signatures throughout a year from somebody on something. And it definitely is an appropriate best use of efficiency at the City Hall.
Do we have like a flow chart of who, I mean, can you just give it to anybody, or do you have like a certain standard as to the level of class of role that can do it?
Sure. Yeah, we prepare an internal memo that we do once or twice a year when we update any signature authority that I've delegated. And that's something I'd be glad to share with the council. It's primarily directors. I think there are very few exceptions where it's somebody other than a director where some of that authority has been delegated.
Okay. And so do you know how many under 3.2.2 from 25 to 50,000, how many times you've had to do that in like a rolling 12 months?
I don't know offhand.
Is it a lot or?
Not a lot.
Not a lot. And do you keep tally of these anywhere and or no? Of the instances?
I will follow up. I meet with my directors every 2 weeks, if not every week. And so I'll sometimes follow up on some of the documents, but usually they're routine in nature.
Okay. I guess if you say you let them know, maybe if you could include the council on that it would make me feel a little bit better because it's going up from 25 to 50,000. And then just kind of who did the authorizations, if you have a memo with that would make me feel more comfortable. And then it's kind of just written and it's done. And if anyone ever wants to see it, it's available for review.
Absolutely. Yeah, we could share that memo with you. We did one probably 3-4 months ago. That was the last time any new authority was delegated. So I'd be glad to share that with the council.
That'd be great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Will or Carrie, is there anything you want to add related to this recommended report here?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. Not specific, unless there's additional specific questions. The 50,000 was meant to. City manager has $50,000 of signature authority currently under agreements and contracts and things like that. And this is one instance where the authority dropped to 25,000, and because he can sign for 50 anywhere else, this was kind of an oddball situation where we had only 25 under settlements. That was the thinking there, that why do we have 50 across the board and then 25 in one spot? That was the primary reason. Some of the questions in terms of like how often it comes up, I don't believe this comes up very often. I think this is just something, as you're reviewing it, we say, what, why this doesn't flow right? Like more like, why does it go down to 25,000? I couldn't answer that question either. If you were to say, well, why did it go down? And there, as Tim mentioned, there's a very lengthy memo on signature authority delegation that Tim signs that, I mean, I'll just name a few of them because they're very random in terms of you don't really think about them until you realize Tim otherwise would have to sign thousands of things like he said. But I've got a copy of it, and things like right of entry agreements to the city engineer, director of public works, accepting offers of dedication, right of way certificates, notice of completion for public works, projects up to $50,000. Those are a few of them, but there's all sorts of operational. There's things that go to economic development to the assistant city manager. The director of parks has temporary use of city facilities, instructor agreements, the chief, addenda to master permits to enter and use school district properties for police training. And there's just a whole host of things that we'll share that with you, but there's all sorts of things that you would never even think about.
Thank you very much. And I don't know if anyone else has any questions about C1.
Are there any further questions? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion for C1?
I make a motion that we approve C1, policy change.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Roll call vote, please.
I think I need to read the ordinance title first. An ordinance amending City Council Administrative Policy 10-13 signature authority related to non-development related services under a deposit agreement, City Attorney and Director signature authority sections, and minor revisions for consistency.
Thank you.
And the roll call vote. Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rary?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Bryant?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
Okay, thank you. Council Member Mendoza, item C6.
E6. So this one has a lot of red in it, which is fine. I like the red line because then we can see what's changed or not. But this one, there was a comment in here that had been added that I couldn't find that it lived anywhere else and got moved unless I'm wrong, about Oh yeah, it's section 2.44.070 to recommend to the city council plans for the future growth, development, and beautification of the city. So that was the original one. And now we're adding, and to undertake the study for preparation and recommendation of the general plan and amendments for the long-term physical development of the city and of any land outside its boundaries, which in the commission's judgment bears relation to the development of the city. What does that mean, to do something outside of the city?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Just real quick, and I understand your question, Councilmember Mendoza. That's actually it's actually been moved, so it's currently in the ordinance.
Okay, where is that?
It's section 080C. So it's being moved and combined
from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not a new section.
But it lived inside this chapter.
That's correct. It's currently chapter 2.20. So the action that staff is recommending is that this particular chapter be repealed and then replaced with the new chapter 2.44.
Is it redlined in here somewhere? The old one? What page? What is
yes,
it on?
It's on packet page 136.
I'm going down to 136.
And it's section C.
Okay, there it is. Any land outside.
Yep.
And why are we doing all these changes? Do we know? Like, I mean, what's the catalyst? If it's the same, I guess I go back to remember Park and Rec, and that's what scares me. Go back in Park and Rec, and we were taking a bunch of their authority away. Are we doing anything like that here? Is there anything that takes their authority away, or
no?
Okay, that's
it's primarily clarification. There's some references to the California Government Code, and then the other thing is just to ensure consistency with the other commission ordinances that the council's been looking at, say, over the past, I think, year or so.
So this doesn't change their job really at all.
No.
They still have the same authorities, they can do the same. Okay, and that's always my biggest concern. So
sure.
Thank you for reviewing that for me.
You're welcome.
And I think when we're reviewing commissions, and not for you, Eric, but just like for Tim, maybe, like let's leave, because the public, we got call. I think a lot of us got calls about this, and it's always kind of top of mind. We don't put those in consent. We leave them out of consent so that if there is public comment or questions, that we can discuss it,
I think I would say to that, we publish an agenda and we hope everybody reads every page. So there's a misconception that if we put on consent, we're trying to hide something. Usually consent is routine in nature or administrative, where it's really not significant. If there's and staff always recommends where they think it should go on the agenda, and then I have final call about, no, that shouldn't stay on consent. We need to move it down to new business, or it's fine on consent.
Yeah.
This one, because there was nothing of substance. Yeah, a lot of red line.
Yeah.
The Parks and Rec one you mentioned that we brought back a year ago that had some challenges, that will not be on consent, just so everyone knows. Anything that looks controversial, we don't leave on consent, but this one's a little more routine in nature.
Yeah, I just think Planning Commission is kind of has all eyes on it, a lot of eyes on it. So keeping that one just, top of mind so that people can see it. And I think we've gotten the habit of consent is just consent, and like we kind of go through it, but pulling it out on something like that would be helpful. I mean, I think, just because I know people called about it. So,
sure.
So that's it. So I will make a motion to adopt the changes in the Planning Commission? Is that okay?
Okay.
We have a first and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Oh, I don't know if someone had questions. Did any have questions? I did that without asking. Sorry.
I have a question. I would agree with your questions, but I would also like to say that I believe that the changes like this, Planning Commission, other commissions should definitely be under the consent. I think that is a concern that I think should be addressed. So I would agree with that.
And if I may clarify the motion just to make sure that staff understands it, it would be as detailed in the staff report. You move to introduce and waive the first reading of the ordinance related to the Planning Commission. I believe.
Oh, exactly what Damien says, as listed in the staff report, waiving the first reading to accept the ordinance. Is that okay?
Adopting the ordinance. Yes, that's correct.
Adopt the ordinance.
And I'll do the second.
Thank you.
Roll call vote, please.
I'll read the title of the ordinance, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Brentwood repealing Brentwood Municipal Code Chapter 2.20 Planning Commission, adding a new Chapter 2.44 Planning Commission, and repealing resolutions and policies pertaining to the Planning Commission. Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rary?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Bryant?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you. Councilmember Meyer, item C7.
I did not actually pull this because I think it's controversial. I more pulled it because it wasn't super clear to me, and I thought this would be something, a good example of something our residents might need a little bit more understanding of, and a little bit more clarification for. And I think I believe, if I understand correctly, it's based on a state requirement. It's an annual report. It's kind of boilerplate. But in looking at it the first time, I'm seeing words like budget and, obligation payment schedule, and things that are just a little bit of, a little more clarification would be helpful, I think, for the general public and, honestly, for myself as well. So thank you.
All right, good evening again. I'll go ahead and jump in on this one. So this all goes back to the dissolution of Redevelopment from about 10 years ago now. And so we had a Brentwood Redevelopment Agency that was a standalone entity. The state dissolved it about 10 years ago due to budget issues and created what's known as the successor agency, which we've filled that role. So redevelopment had to go away, it had to wind down. Problem is there was all redevelopment agencies had outstanding debt. So you couldn't just close the doors. You have all these obligations that need to be paid, bondholders, all those sorts of things. Redevelopment agencies owned property, parcels, and what's going to happen to all those things. So an inventory of all the assets had to be taken, an accounting for all of the liabilities that were still owed had to be taken. And those all have to be unwound. And that takes decades, unfortunately, when you have bonds that are outstanding for a couple of years. So what this is doing is every year we have to prepare a list of that year's expenses and take that to the county. So the county oversees all the former redevelopment agencies for the entire Contra Costa County. So we go there every other, Pittsburgh goes there, Oakley goes there. We all go there once a year to meet. And the county board of supervisors, and I think they have a couple other members on there, get to vote if they approve these expenditure plans every single year. And so what you're seeing here on this item is we have outstanding debt service. That's remained the same. It will continue to remain the same for about 10 to 12 more years is left on these bonds. Really, we don't have a whole lot else going on these. We have some administrative allowance, so we get reimbursed because it takes staff time to prepare these reports and to pay their debt service. So we didn't get left, completely high and dry in terms of having to do all the work without getting paid for it. So essentially, in a nutshell, what this is trying to do, or what it is doing, is closing the doors on the old redevelopment agency. So these are the last remnant pieces here. So it used to be a lot more complicated in the early years. So we had all sorts of contracts that were going back and forth, and we even had leases with some of the facilities. Now, all that's going to be happening from here on out is we're just going to pay the remainder of the debt. We're going to get our admin piece, and then we're going to dispose of the parcels that we still own. And as an aside, when that happens, when we sell the parcels we still own, or the former redevelopment agency owned, those funds are going to go right to the county and get split across all the taxing entities within Brentwood. So Brentwood will get about 16% of the value of those parcels. The fire district will get about 10%. The state will get about 50%. Essentially, nothing is owned by Brentwood anymore. It's all part of this dissolution that the state put on us 10 years ago. So it's been challenging to get through all this, but we're in the home stretch on this one now, fortunately.
Thank you. I was going to ask the questions and you already answered them. So thank you for that. Anyone else? Okay. Margaret, did you want me to read this or just say I would move to approve C7?
There's no ordinance with this, so I think a motion is appropriate.
Wonderful. I move to approve C7.
Okay, we have a first.
Second.
Second, a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rary?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Bryant?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you. Moving into business items, item D1, it pertains to a reimbursement agreement for a UPIC marketing and documentary campaign. And Josh Ewan will be presenting this item. Josh.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Josh Ewan, Senior Analyst with Economic Development. Honorable Mayor, City Council, thank you for your time this evening. I'll be joined this evening with this request from the Harvest Time representatives. And if we can, Margaret and folks will promote Sean McCauley, who's the treasurer of Harvest Time in Brentwood, as well as other representatives of that organization. What we're looking to do tonight, with your approval, is to award funding from the Agricultural Business Program, which has been established since February of 2018. At that time, the council approved $300,000 to support agricultural tourism and events and marketing through the county, Brentwood County ag areas, the Ag Corps, and supporting tourism at farms and other initiatives that link into our overall economic development strategic initiatives, as well as our economic development action plan to integrate with the farms and tourism components. In the staff report, we outlined in that business program the $300,000, which I have available as well, various actions that the council took over time in those 3 to 4 years relating to expenditures, mainly focused on marketing. The main recipient of most of those funds has been Harvest Time in Brentwood, as well as Contra Costa Wine Growers, being our largest players, representing probably about 70 farms in the regional area. So after meeting with Harvest Time staff, we went to the Ag Enterprise Committee on December 6th of 2021, requesting consideration from Council Member Rary as well as Vice Mayor Rodriguez to support a designation of the Brentwood Farm area, the UPIC area, as the UPIC capital, with city financial support to focus on marketing for this 2022 year, as well as do a video documentary campaign that is to the benefit of the region and trying to get some national and international attention for the UPIC capital. One of the really interesting and unique things that Harvest Time and its members talked about was trying to integrate with the city and trying to describe what it's like to have a UPIC daycation in Brentwood in our regional farms, and then also trying to describe what it's like to be in a UPIC city. Just the integration between the farms and the community and the business districts, and trying to support economic development activities and bring in that tourism from a larger region. So what, as described in the report, Harvest Time Brentwood is looking for financial support from the Ag Business Program. These funds can only be used for ag-related tourism and ag-related support. The funds are generated from new development through ag mitigation fees. It's a development impact fee, and they're put aside in a separate enterprise fund. And so the council has historically, over at least the last decade to 2 decades, has supported farms using funding from this program, from the fee program, to support conservation easements, tourism, and other business grants to Harvest Time, its members, and the wine growers in the region. So as detailed in the report, Harvest Time is requesting $66,000, of which $20,000 will be used for the upcoming marketing campaign to designate this area as a UPIC capital, as well as doing focused social media buys for about $6,000, some digital publications, and then what Harvest Time will be presenting tonight is the opportunity to partner on a documentary that really elevates the UPIC brand and be able to elevate Brentwood as maybe a regional player in the tourism thing. We offer a very unique opportunity in Brentwood in our UPIC farms that really cannot be duplicated in California. It's not really duplicated in the nation. So we want to raise the flag high that we are the UPIC capital and a destination for people all over the country to come visit us and visit our great farms. So with that, if I may, Harvest Time in Brentwood has prepared a really nice video, and I'd like to play that. I will caution that we'll do our best, and hopefully it plays pretty well. And if there are interruptions, we'll stop and we'll hand off to Sean McCauley to give us a little bit more information. So let me see if I can pull that up. Great, so you should be seeing a video screen. And I'll go ahead and play it.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council members. On behalf of Harvest Time in Brentwood, we want to thank you for your continued support and partnership. Our Harvest Time organization continues to expand and thrive, even through unprecedented and challenging times. In 2019, we launched Harvest Time's new website optimized for mobile viewing. With 71% of website visitors viewing from a mobile device, a new website was essential. We introduced new features for our farm members, adding capabilities like posting messages and utilizing the open and close feature to quickly and easily update customers from their mobile devices. This feature proved to be even more beneficial during the pandemic.
It was very easy, and I would just click open, and at the end of the day I would click close right on my phone. So it was very simple and easy to do.
Fall festivities in Brentwood have become a tradition for many families near and far.
Goodbye summer and hello fall. It's time to pick the perfect pumpkin right from our farms. Take a ride on a tractor. How about get lost in a gigantic corn maze? It's time to get outside and make new memories. For more family fun, visit harvestforyou.com.
The launch of the fall harvest season 2018 continues to be a local favorite, with 2020 and 2021 being our best years. Total fall Facebook reach in 2018 was 39,000. We're excited to share in 2021, our total fall Facebook reach totaled to 425,000 individuals. We were seeing 40% of local visitors, while 60% came from out of the surrounding areas.
Yeah, we saw a lot more coming from San Jose.
We were finding out people were coming from Livermore, Berkeley.
Rio Vista from Isleton starting to trickle in from Sacramento, and that was definitely something new.
Also from the Central Valley as well, from Tracy. They were coming our direction just for pumpkins.
With an increase of 28% in web traffic during the fall, our fall videos were viewed over 300,000 times. 2020 was an unprecedented year filled with challenges and uncertainties. Farms had to quickly pivot from the norm and implement county protocols. Farms like Majority Ranch, 5 Star Cherries, and Bacchini Fruit Tree implemented online reservation systems.
Early 2020, we were all surprised with COVID. So we had to scramble to be compliant. And one of those components was a reservation system. With that reservation system, we were able to limit the amount of people in the orchard. Once we figured out that that was a successful model, we shared that with our Harvest Time co-members. I tell you, Harvest Time has been a great resource just for sharing of information. That way we're not all inventing ourselves over and over again out here, and that's part of what their mission is to support all the farms in the area.
While members like Campos Family Vineyards, Urban Edge Farm Store, and Gursky Ranch implemented online ordering for local pickup or shipping.
During COVID, we noticed that people could not find vegetables at the grocery store. The demand was so strong that we had to quickly pivot and put everything online and use an online system. We were able to get across a lot of people at one time. They were able to figure out that we were doing some online sales, so that the Harvest Time resource online was a big help for us.
Also, we created marketing content that encouraged visitors to follow all protocols and managed to keep our content fun and inviting. Also, we introduced an interactive digital map during the UPIC season for easy navigation, organically receiving over 45,000 hits in 2 short weekends. Social media marketing has proven to be the strongest tool used to reach Harvest Time's audience. Since we started creating video content in 2019, total Facebook reach grew to 1 million in 2021, an increase of 107% since 2018.
I think the effects of video are amazing. I think it makes people get the energy of our area a lot better, so it compels them to come out and visit us.
With over 70% of our content reaching our target audience organically, it's evident our content is engaging and worth sharing.
We were able to put out high quality videos that really hit what the audience was looking for. It really compelled them to engage, to ask questions, to share, and all those things is what create that organic reach. We're at the very beginning of it. It's very exciting when you start to see such a positive response when we're at the beginning of the trajectory.
Brentwood is unique in many different ways. One of its biggest assets is its ability to have sustainable, vertically integrated farms being nestled between 2 metropolitan areas. Its rich agricultural soils and its generations of farming experience have proven to be the UPIC capital. It's time to let the world know.
What you just watched is a project that is 4 years in the making. In this documentary, we'll elevate the history of our agricultural roots, Brentwood's unique farm experiences, how ag tourism helps build our local economy, and the educational aspects of farming. You'll meet multi-generational farm families that have farmed in Brentwood for over 100 years and experience the collaborational efforts that have turned our area into a UPIC capital. This will be a celebration of Brentwood's agricultural experience, past, present, and future. Thank you for your time, and this concludes our presentation.
Great. Thank you to the Harvest Time Board for producing that video and providing that to the council and the public. Just wanted to recap the financial side of things here. As mentioned, in 2018, the council had approved $300,000 for business program using ag mitigation funding that can only be used to support agricultural preservation, and agritourism. Both committee members, Rary and Vice Mayor Rodriguez, are recommending that the full council review this proposal and accept it and approve the request for funding for $66,000. We would subsequently, as staff, enter into a reimbursement agreement, which would be paid upon completion in progress. The Harvest Time members are here. Should you have any questions, I'm sure they'd be glad to talk about their project and what they see as the vision for the future. This concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any clarifying questions of staff? I see Councilmember Mendoza has her hand.
Yeah, this is phenomenal. I think it's fantastic. I love our farms out here, and I would like to preserve them for eternity if possible, like forever. And I think one of the things we should put on your staff report is we did give them $15,000, but they weren't able to use it, right, for the trolley?
Great question, Councilmember Mendoza. So, yeah, actually, the Contra Costa wine growers received $15,000, and they'll be doing an event, hopefully, with appropriate county guidance for March of 2022.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just checking on that because they haven't used it yet, but I think it's phenomenal. I share your pages all the time. When people ask where to go, I send them to your website. I think it's great. Your mobile tool is amazing. I use that to find, I mean, people ask us questions as council members of where to go and what to do. So I try to share your posts as much as possible during the season. So thank you so much. And my parents were field workers when they came from Mexico. So I like that there was field workers in there because I think they're always like the forgotten heroes because they do so much work. So thank you for highlighting them as well.
Thank you. Councilmember Rary.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify the $300,000 was part of our 2018-2020 strategic initiative plan. And so it's been carried on through that. And that we do have how much a total in the ag enterprise? Over $1 million, isn't it?
Yeah, great point, Councilmember Rary. Yes, it would be about $2 million currently in the ag mitigation fund.
Yeah, and that there's still more funds coming in. So that $2 million is as new development takes place, they will all be paying ag mitigation fees. So we will be having more money than that $2 million coming in over the long run. But yeah, that was only clarifying that I wanted to make sure that they knew that this came from a strategic initiative that this. So, all right, thanks.
Councilmember Meyer.
Absolutely blown away by that mini documentary. I just loved it. I smiled the whole time. I thought it was fantastic. I have another comment for when we're doing comments, but my question is around the Contra Costa wine growers, and I'm wondering if is there a separate marketing campaign going on for them? Is it going to be integrated together? I know they kind of go hand in hand with Harvest Time, but would like to learn a little bit more about how their efforts will be promoted as well, if they will, as part of this.
If you'd like to comment about your members.
You want me to take that, Josh?
Yep, please, about your wine grower members.
Yeah, I don't have any wine grower members on here, but so Harvest Time has wine grower members in it. So the wine grower entity is separate from Harvest Time, but the entities, the principals are also Harvest Time members. So they do act differently, but we work together on projects. So the Wine Growers Association is geared more towards winery events, things like that. Harvest Time is geared towards promoting ag tourism and the UPICs primarily. So, but we work very closely with the wine group. Again, they are members of Harvest Time.
Thank you. And is there potential for cross promotion when it comes to come and pick your cherries and then go wine tasting afterwards and do that kind of cross promotion?
Very, very good question. Yeah. So yeah, one of our initiatives this year is to really try and identify on our map and our mobile app a wine route, winery route. And so we are currently working on that. So when we have the traction from the UPIC season, we would love for them to also understand that we are a wine growing region. So we're going to work hard on that this year.
Great. Thank you. And thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, do you have your hand up?
No, Mayor, I don't have no questions. I just have some comments. I'll share them later.
Okay, thank you. Then at this time, we will open public comment. Margaret?
I received no written public comments on this item. If you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature, and I'll call upon your name if provided and unmute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. And I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Okay, at this time, we will close public comment and move into council discussion. Who'd like to start off? Councilmember Meyer.
Yeah, I was just dying to say this. We've been talking about the Innovation Center, and I mentioned at that meeting how much I thought we needed to really include in our focus what we bring to the table when it comes to agriculture. And there were some people that were talking about that kind of being old Brentwood and old fashioned, and maybe it didn't fit the new image and what the businesses were trying to bring in. And I completely disagree, and this is exactly why. I think the marketing campaign that has been put together for this is far reaching. It's very modern. It's very trendy. It's hugely appealing. I think everything about that will be appealing to businesses looking to come here and to start building their futures in Brentwood as part of the Innovation Center. I think there's absolutely 100% benefit on all sides for that partnership to work together and for us to use this kind of campaigning towards bringing new people in when it comes to the Innovation Center and showing them how engaged our community is and how much we have to offer, and how when they bring their business here, they're going to get, shoppers and patrons from all over the place. So I'm really excited about kind of synergy of the two things working together and how they can benefit each other. I just think it's fantastic. Again, thank you.
Councilmember Meyer? I'm sorry, Mendoza.
It's okay. Again, I think it's fantastic. I just have a question. How are you going to distribute the film? Who's the audience for it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we actually have two phases to this project. So Harvest Time will be funding. Obviously, the $40,000 isn't enough to do a full-fledged documentary, and so we're going to be funding a part of that, obviously, with our private funds. But the phase two of this project would really be launching this documentary nationally, right? I mean, a real goal would be to not only do it locally initially, but nationally, statewide, and then nationally. So that we're going to put together in 2022 a campaign just to make sure that we have a good plan to launch it accurately to the right people, and obviously across the United States. So yeah, I mean, there is two phases. The second phase of the marketing piece of it is a little more tricky, and it's going to cost some money, but we plan on doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic quality. I think there's great stories, so I love it. Thank you so much.
We do want to, a couple of our board members had a great idea of just launching it locally within our own theaters first. And so kind of having our, the Delta Theater or AMC's, whatever, launch this documentary locally, and then of course outwardly. So
I mean, like Salt Lake City and all that, all those movie festivals.
Councilmember Rare?
Sean, didn't you you likened this documentary during our presentation to another documentary that was out there that ended up going places? And do you remember which documentary that was?
Yeah, in Paso Robles, Netflix has a documentary on the tin. It's it's Paso Robles. It's gosh, I forget the name of it. It escapes me right now, but I think it's called the Tin City. I don't know if you guys have seen that documentary on Netflix or not, but I don't know if you guys have been to Paso Robles or that area in Tin City, but it really doesn't. I mean, obviously we're all biased on this Zoom meeting. I think Brentwood has hands down a better story to tell than that. But you know, the documentary entails in-depth history with Brentwood. I mean, you just saw kind of a snippet, a teaser, but we go into the national exposure, the worldwide exposure that are, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but our cherries are shipped to Japan and they're sold all over the world. And so we're going to follow that cherry from Brentwood to other parts of the world. So it's a little bit, you know, we couldn't put everything into this teaser, but it's got some meat and potatoes to it, where a lot of documentaries, that's what they need, right, to get that kind of traction. So.
And I've got to say that when we first saw it, I mean, but I too had, you know, just ear to ear grin watching it. And by the time it was done, even before they did their pitch, I says, I'm sold. Because it really speaks to what our community is about. I mean, it started off as a farming community and grew and grew and you know, to what the city is, and we're still surrounded by ag. And that's the wonderful thing about living where we're at, is that you can just drive a couple minutes and you are in the country, you are driving through farms, you got a tractor going down the road in front of you, and it's okay because you love being in that type of community. So thank you, and I support this. I by the comments I've heard tonight, I think that it's a 5-0, hopefully, but I'll wait to hear what my other council members have to say.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez.
Yeah, I mean, obviously everybody's had positive things to say, and I agree with everybody. For me, it's really nice to see, you know, to be honest with you, we've been raised out here all our lives, to see that a lot of the young farmers' kids that are involved in this project, right, and that are stepping up for a lot of their farms and their parents' farms over the years to be part of this project. So it's really nice to see that. It's really nice to see the collaboration between the farmers working together to make this happen. Both my parents were farmers here. They both grew up in BG Camp. And so, to be honest with you, as a long resident, it's really nice just to see the collaboration, seeing the young people from a lot of the old-time farmers stepping up and putting these things together. So I just want to commend this group, and also Sean for doing a wonderful job on this.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to echo, well, I can't even echo as well as Councilmember Meyer put it. There's no way to put into words how I absolutely agree completely with just every word that she said eloquently. You know, one of the conversations that we had regarding the Innovation Center, the term came up, Brentwood's identity. And really, it's for me, that's a no-brainer. We have the identity. I think that we need to combine it with the technology components of our industries that could be attracted out here. But I would love to see, and you know, the brain trust with this group. I had the privilege of sitting on that agriculture committee for several years, and Councilmember Rary has been on it almost exclusively from the beginning. Is the ideas that you come up with, the knowledge that you have, and your willingness to work together is something that is, I think it's the heart and the strength of this. I would love to see in this documentary, and it may already be, some of the stories of the multi-generational families. Farmers all over the country have been forced out of being able to do what their families have been doing for generations. And the fact that we do have the children of the farmers, some of them have gone to college, they've learned new technologies and techniques, they've come back and they're making Brentwood even better than it's been before. Our ag core is the foundation of who we are. And it is, you know, again, like everyone has said, it really is our identity, and it's the heartbeat of the community. And you know, Sean, thank you and all of the group for everything that you do. The vision that you have, I think, is just starting to be seen from the greater community. This, like has been said earlier, this has been many years in the making, but the product that you have and this thought and idea is absolutely, I think, going to be one of the key components, a game changer as far as our Brentwood community and our economic development is concerned.
And this is a collaboration of several different people, obviously not just me. I mean, the board, we have a fantastic board, great generational people on that board, great minds. We have great associates that help us do what we do. And just to speak to Councilman Rodriguez and Councilmember Mendoza's point, that one of the biggest highlights of this documentary is a generational farm worker that from Blue Goose Camp, when literally Johnny and I were kids, these generations have now become you-pick vertical farmers. And so from farm labor to owning their own you-pick vertical farms is a story in itself, right? And so that's just a real highlight that we're excited about. I know that's a big deal for people to know, you know, and so the amount of effort we've gotten from our team and our associates, I just have to thank them. They're all listening today. And I by far don't want to take the credit for any of this. I'm just a representative, you know, echoing what we did as a team. So thank you.
Well, I think it would be very appropriate for the Agriculture Committee that brought this forward, if they would like to move this forward and have a motion. I think it would be appropriate for them to make it.
Well, I'd like to make a motion and to move this item forward at the $66,000 request for marketing, for, I think some of it was for video as well as for the documentary.
I second.
We have a first and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rary?
Yes, yes, yes.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Mayor Bryant?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimous.
And before you go, I think that you should double the pay of the little squirrel that snatched that little cherry. That was a phenomenal shot. And again, thank you for everything that you do with our community. Thank you. This is going to be wonderful.
Thank you.
So we will move on then to item E, requests for future agenda items. Are there any new requests for future agenda items? Okay, seeing none. Screen change. Seeing none, then we will move into item E2, and it is regarding the request from Council Member Mendoza for City Council discussion and possible direction to staff related to outdoor dining design standards and with approvals to be considered by the Planning Commission. And I'll turn it to Council Member Mendoza to explain her request.
Yeah, I've gotten some feedback from residents just on the spacing and what's going on out there. And actually someone I know tripped the other day because there was no spacing. So, and even before that, I had gotten calls. So it's just, I think that we need to, because they're such a big part of our downtown, and I know that right now it's a temporary ordinance, but I think we should kind of include it on Planning Commission design review, make sure that design works, that the spacing works, and just once it goes from temporary to permanent, have, you know, do all the work now so that when it's permanent, we have all, you know, all of the design standards all set and we're not like scrambling for design standards on outdoor seating and outdoor awnings and all that good stuff.
Thank you. At this time, we'll open public comments. Margaret?
I received no written public comments on this item. If you wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature and I'll call upon your name if provided and unmute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. And I have no hands raised.
We'll close public comments at this time. And if there are any council members. Yes. Councilmember Rary.
Yeah, you know, when we did the outside seating to begin with, the outdoor dining, my understanding was that we were to work with the health department. The health department would actually, first they would work with the planning department, or not, the economic development and planning, to determine how seating should be by meeting ADA accessible and so forth. And then the health department would also approve that. So I'm not sure how that has changed and why the seating isn't being followed in that manner. So probably do need to look at having some type of standards for outdoor seating, just like indoor seating. I mean, the health department only allows so many tables. You have to be ADA accessible in there. So it should be the same for outdoor seating as well.
Councilmember Meyer.
Agreed. And I think the design is, obviously it's important for the consistency and look and professionalism and all of that for our downtown area, for it to look its absolute best. But I do definitely feel like the focus of the ADA compliance is key here. There's a concept, I believe it's called 8 to 80 cities. Basically, it means that the sidewalks have room for your strollers and your wheelchairs and your walkers. And I join other council members in that I've walked down and had to maneuver around, and I've seen other people having to step into the street to maneuver around. And I definitely am all about doing what we can to support our small businesses downtown and allowing them to do this outdoor dining. But we have got to protect residents who are in these vulnerable positions of not being steady on their feet or using assistive devices to be able to walk down the street. And they need the space in order to do that. We've got to protect them. And then in the end, we have to protect ourselves from lawsuits as well. It's something we need to think about. So design, yes, I think that's part of the whole thing is the look, but also the ADA compliance part of it. I would absolutely support staff time and efforts on putting this together into something a little bit more official.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez.
Yeah, I agree with everybody. And I guess my question is similar to what Councilmember Rary has mentioned, is that, I mean, did we drop the ball in regards to how these things were supposed to be put together outside in regards to the ADA, but also the Contra Costa County, you know, health department, things like that. So, I mean, obviously, I would think that we hopefully followed through, and if not, why? I know that I've seen incidents downtown too with people with wheelchairs and different things like that where they struggle. So I think this is a great opportunity for us just to look at it and see what we can do to make things better. But at the same time, hopefully we're following the, you know, the guidelines that we should be following.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead. I was going to say one thing. ADA is like the minimum. Like we can do what, like if ADA says 48 inches, we could go 50 inches, 55 inches. I think that's the design point, is ADA is the minimum that we should require. But if we feel like there's spaces that should be bigger, that should be part of design review, not necessarily ADA. Does that make sense? And I you know, I had talked to Tim about that. It's, you know, from a design perspective, we can go more than what is required if we have guidelines for that, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Any applications that we receive for permits to do the temporary outdoor dining are all consistent with the ADA requirements. The fences are all fixed and have been inspected by our inspectors. It's where you have tables and chairs or people encroaching in that path of travel that's complicated things. So as you mentioned, Councilmember Mendoza, we can certainly put together some guidelines that would reflect in doing the permanent outdoor dining permits that we want to exceed the ADA requirements where there's room to do so, and make sure that we've got a little more flexibility should there be an occasional chair or table or a crowd that's blocking that path of travel.
And also ABC rules. Let's make sure that they have to be in an enclosed area when they have alcoholic beverages. I know I've seen tables outside of enclosed areas with alcoholic beverages, but we should make sure that we're following ABC rules as well.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Mendoza, would you be willing to add to your recommendation that the city look into alternative or optional more space downtown as well? You know, I completely agree with these. I think any of us that have spent time downtown have run into these very same issues or seen some real problems. But in an effort, if we're going to spend the time and money to look at this, maybe look at some options as well for additional seating that could be safely implemented.
Yeah,
we can. Like the parklets I had mentioned.
Exactly like the parklets.
Like, can you define a parklet?
The parklets, well, when I first brought it up in Mountain View, they actually took the where the parking spaces were, and they built out from that so that you would have seating on like a wooden platform or something that is actually in the street, but then had nice planters, you know, blocking them. And I think they only had one-way traffic down this one road. And so they took up parking spaces on both sides of the road so that the restaurants could expand out. That left the sidewalk open for people to be able to walk freely on the sidewalk, but lots of extra seating out in the streets.
So you'd want to transfer the seating from the sidewalk to the street.
And they can do that. I mean, even when we were in Sacramento, they didn't use the parklets up there. One of the restaurants we went to just, and I took a picture of it so that, you know, if anybody ever asks, I can say, see, this restaurant did it. And they just put up, I think the wine barrels or something like that they used to block the sides of the streets with, and then put the tables there, and then they had a tarp over, you know, a canopy type thing over that seating area for the hot sun and shade from that. But so they can do parklets. Mountain View, boy, the Mountain View just changed. It used to be the deadest city in the world. And now you walk down there and it's hopping down there because people go into the downtown area. They've got the traffic or the foot traffic through the restaurants, the food as you're driving or walking by, you can smell all that good food coming up and you can see people eating. And it's really made a difference in the Mountain View area, in their downtown area. But it was something we proposed to the Downtown Business Coalition, and they weren't willing to give up their parking spaces. I had mentioned that maybe we could work with B of A and with some of the other places that we could use there that don't have evening hours, and use those spaces for evening hours. Like B of A, leave a couple spaces that are specifically for ATM. So only ATM can go in there, but the rest of the parking lot can be used for parking. Or over there where Dino's used to be, I forget what's in there now, but
doggies.
They weren't open at nighttime. None of those were. So that would be a place that they could park at night. There's a parking lot behind the jewelers, as well as behind the Chinese restaurant downtown. There's at least maybe 15 parking spaces between those two places right there that, you know, maybe we could use.
Do we have restrictions right now on, I mean, I know you have to wear a mask when you go in, but do we have restrictions on indoor dining? I thought, because we were doing it because there was restrictions, right? I don't think we have restrictions right now, do we?
I think just for vaccinations.
You're asking the current county health order?
Yeah. What are the restrictions right now?
It's masking indoors regardless of vaccination status. So restaurants would be, if you're eating, then you can take the mask off, but otherwise masking indoors.
But do they have vaccinations also required indoors, right?
Right, okay. That hasn't changed.
Councilmember Meyer.
Thank you. I have eaten in parklets. I enjoy them. I think they're wonderful. I think it's a great use of space and expanded, obviously patronage and all that. But I did read an article recently about the city council in Pleasanton, and they had, Karen's read the same.
Yeah.
There were parklets in the downtown area, and they were there on a temporary basis based on the state of emergency for COVID and outdoor dining. And then the city had not done their street cleaning and maintenance. And so they actually voted to require that the restaurants remove the parklets, pay for demolition or storage, or then pay for reinstallation, which I think is too much of a burden to put on businesses that are already struggling. And I would support parklets, but not if we're going to go through something like that and be asked to take away their ability to make money that way, and then make them pay for the demolition and storage, etc. So I would ask that if we do something like this, we proactively put something in there that protects against something like that having to happen.
And also design standards, right? Because I think a lot of the cities are having problems with what they actually look like.
Yeah.
But we would need design standards on them if we're going to.
We walked through San Francisco outside, and there were some that were beautiful, like remember where I discussed with the wine barrels and the planters and things, and some that look like a little shack. So
some of them look like homeless encampments.
Exactly, like
Mountain View had the same. So Mountain View must have did it because it was the same up and down the street.
I think maybe if we can define what areas, because if downtown doesn't want to get rid of their parking spaces, then do these other places want to give up their parking during the evenings?
Unless you're talking about like you can't have a parklet here, and then someone can drive there and park there.
Yeah.
Dangerous and complicated if someone's stepping out behind a parklet into the street.
I'm sure staff would be able to vet all of that and bring it back.
Yeah.
So do we have a motion on this item?
So can I make a motion that that staff spend time looking at when outdoor seating goes permanent, not now because right now it's temporary. Make sure that everything is ADA compliant, everything is ABC compliant, that there is enough space regardless of the ADA. Like, do we want more space for our residents to have to walk through? Because some places even with ADA are tight. And then could we also look at the option of where we could put outdoor parklets, and what design standards would we have for those?
We have a first and a second. Okay, first and a second, Margaret.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rary?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Bryant?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
Okay. At this time then, I need a motion.
Mr. Mayor, before we do, can we take a moment in honor of Don Huntington, the editor and founder of the 110 magazine, volunteered at so many different things. I mean, Don was a man around town, very well loved by our community. And he passed this last week, and if we could end this meeting in his honor.
Absolutely. He was a treasure of a man, and he will be greatly missed. So thank you so much for that. So yes, if I have a motion to adjourn in honor of the memory of Don Huntington.
I'll move that.
Second.
And a second, roll call vote.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rary?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mayor Bryant?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Be safe.